Now can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. All right, excellent. So tonight we're going to have Kelly McKracken talking on the science behind lighting, which is really great for all of us growing in little apartments and trying to get stuff in the bay here to grow. So a few announcements before we start. Just a reminder, if you want extra raffle tickets to win some of these amazing plants that Kelly's brought, you can bring food, you can bring a plant for show and tell, and you can bring yourself. Okay? Those are ways to have tickets. I want to welcome Twyla. Is she here? Welcome. Thank you for coming. All right, and then we've got a Gold Country and Path Paradise Spring Open House. That's going to be 10 days from now, 2 weeks. The following weekend. Check that out. I'm not sure how they want to do this. Maybe you can take a picture of this, but if you bring the flyer for the Gold Country, you can get a free plant with any $25 purchase.
Is it on the newsletter?
It may not be it came too late to go in the newsletter this month. I don't know. Susan, are you here?
I think you can also go on the Gold Country Paradise. They have, the Gold Country website. They have this information on the website.
Okay, so go to Gold Country and get the flyer off their website.
And the pizza at the Dueling Dogs Brewery is really good, by the way. The flowers are pretty.
Okay, so we're coming up on a deadline next year, POE. You can choose the theme. If you do win, we'll vote in the board meeting on Monday. If you win, you get 2 tickets. You get to go to the gala night and you get to go to POE for free. So suggest some themes. You can scan this QR code to do that. $150 value, yours free. Another thing I want you to put in your calendars, Orchids in the Park this July 26th and 27th. Come to volunteer. If you don't volunteer, spend money. You want a picture of the QR code?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you a picture of that burned house.
Okay, Ron, are you ready to go? Okay, good. I'll let you take it.
So I'm running the election in Jeff's stead since he's in Greece right now. Before I do the election though, those of you who are longtime members like me, have been around for a long time. We just heard that Terry Weaver passed away. So, and his wife Margaret is here. So you may give her your condolences. He's been around for a long time.
She is a judge.
Yeah, he was judge as well, yeah. This is the slate that has been presented by the nominating committee. There is one change. Sharon has been substituted for Stewart, who is termed out. So technically, she is on the floor to the slate. So thank you for. So the first order of business is to ask, are there any further nominations from the floor? Okay, can I hear a motion to close the nominations?
Second.
Anybody opposed? Can I have a motion to elect the slate by acclamation?
I move.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Finish, John.
Can everyone raise their hand to accept the nomination? Congratulations.
Thank you, and Stuart, thank you for 5+ years of volunteering. You know you've done your job and you get phased out, right? But next year, according to bylaws, you can't take more than 5 consecutive terms, so keep that in mind.
Then take out, then come back.
Is there something in the bylaws that say if no one wants to run, you could take that job again? If not, I'm gonna put that in there.
What was the question?
The question is, if there is no one to run to assume the position, there is no, in the bylaws, it specifically says the president, the vice president, the secretary, and the treasurer cannot run more than 5 times consecutively. So if you were to interpret that, I guess you could say if you don't have a run, I don't know. I would think that would violate the intent of the
But
bylaws.
then maybe we ought to put that in there, because in case somebody doesn't want to run.
Yeah.
And you're willing to.
In case you get no nominees.
You have no choice. All right. I think we've got all the announcements. Before I forget, there are some plants back there for sale, some Volvifilum. What was the species on that?
Lindiana.
Winlandiana.
The flowers get to be 7 inches long.
They are in bloom. So check those out and you can get some. So I want to invite Kelly up here. Tonight, we're going to talk about the lighting for orchids. Kelly has been at POE for the last several years and a great grower of miniature orchids, and she's got a focus on dendrobiums and bulbophyllums and gracoid species.
And Harold. Hoyas.
And lots of Hoyas and stagworm ferns. So HD Orchids, High Desert Orchids is the name of the greenhouse business, yeah. The old one, what are you now, if people want to see?
My Instagram is still HD Orchids.
Okay, so you can check out HD Orchids on Instagram if you want to see. She's got stuff, all kinds of educational stuff on the Instagram. But yeah, Kelly works with Tropical Exotic, and she comes every year to POE. And this talk is basically the science behind artificial lighting for orchid cultivation. And yeah, it gives you valuable insights into kind of the plant physiology, whether or not you're growing inside or outside. But I really appreciate you flying up here and doing the talk for us. So thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. I don't really give talks. This is the first one I've given in over a year. Sorry. I was just saying how bad I am at this. I don't give talks much anymore. So if you hate me, I'm sorry. If you love me, I'm sorry you can't have me back. But I hope you love the talk, and please ask questions. I love questions. And if you can't hear me, remind me. I'm sorry. I'm gonna do that again. Okay, I gotta find my talk. There we go. Beautiful Cattleya. So this is my home, that wonderful bio that Derek had up there described my home in Albuquerque. We are a high altitude desert, so it's a unique climate that it gets cooler at night, every night throughout the entire year. So about 30-degree difference day to night. So the humidity is terrible. We have 9 inches of annual rainfall. It's usually pretty low, and 15% humidity. So it's not great for orchids in that way, but we've got that cool night. So I have my beautiful greenhouse in my backyard that is my personal wonderland. Because I can get the humidity up, I can grow some nice things in there, the sophronitis and the cooler growing things that we love. So I started my business about, gosh, 6 years ago now in this little greenhouse, and we ran the business successfully for about 3 years in this tiny little space, and we wanted to expand it. And so in New Mexico, the climate is very difficult. As I mentioned, we have like 300 days a year of sunshine, and when you want to build a large greenhouse, you have that greenhouse effect. And the way we cool in the Southwest is with evaporative cooling. So that basically means constant ventilation. And what am I ventilating that with? Very low humid air. So I would have to rehumidify that air, and then it becomes a money pit. So what we decided to do was forego natural light altogether and build indoors. And so this is what we built. We went inside a warehouse. It was actually a roofing manufacturing building before we moved in. So you can put orchids in really any space with enough determination. We use like some industrial tubing to make the benches. This is probably a bit over-engineered, but the lights are 300-watt LED lights, way overkill for anything you guys are growing. This is a commercial setup for sure. But the coolest part of growing like this was how I could change the environment just with a click of my mouse. I had it all programmed in my computer that I could change the lights just with the touch of a button. So if I had a crop of paphs, I could lower the light and grow those paphs out and bud them out and sell them. And then I could grow a crop of cattleyas. Ordinarily in a greenhouse, I would have to crawl up on the greenhouse and put that shade cloth on, and nobody wants to do that. So LEDs really let you have a versatile space, and then I can have those paths right next to the cattleyas, and I don't have to worry about the light. It's pretty amazing. And you can do this in your house too. You can adapt your LEDs. So this is where I grow now. My business is now closed. I work for a tropical exotic now. You guys have seen me here. But I do grow in my house, in my low humidity, as well as my greenhouse too. But these cabinets have really exploded online. IKEA is a great resource for them. There's a bunch of different sizes and shapes, but it's just like a little display case, and you can add some lights. They're perfectly sized for the lights that I'm going to recommend, and you can just go ham and have a wonderful little tiny greenhouse in your house. A lot of people are growing like this. All right, so these were the big questions that I would like to answer for you. When I was constructing my grow house, a lot of these questions just weren't done. This research wasn't done. Nobody had really grown orchids commercially under lights before. And so I didn't know how much artificial light my orchid needed. So we had to figure it out. And so I'll tell you how we figured it out and how you can figure it out and have a better understanding of what plant light is. And then I'll talk about the actual device. That's just, should I buy a bar? Should I buy a bowl? What kind of thing do I need? There's a lot of things out there. And then the last question is, what spectrum of light? I always get questions about this, and this is something that science has not answered so well for us. The question being, what spectrum of light is gonna produce the best flowers on my orchid? That's what we all want, right? Nobody's looked at that. So I'll show you some evidence about other plants, about what makes other plants grow the best, and we can, make some decisions based on that. Yes. Too quiet. Okay. William. You stole my power, Derek. Okay. So the first question, how much light do I need? Before I start throwing numbers at you, we have to understand how to quantify plant light, because plants see light a little differently than our human eyes do. So when you're shopping for a fixture, a light, you're going to see a lot of lights advertise their brightness in lux, lumens, foot candles, and sometimes even just watts. Usually it's lux or lumens. As orchid growers, we see foot candles a lot. Pretty much orchid growers are the only people that use foot candles. Whatever. Look, it's just essentially the brightness of the light that the human eye can see. And I'll explain that a little bit more in the next slide. Kelvin and CRI, these are the same type of deal. You'll see these numbers when you're looking for grow lights, but you can pretty much ignore them when you're thinking about your plants. These are interpretations of how human eyes see the light. Kelvin is like the color temperature. Is it red? Is it blue? Doesn't matter so much. And then the CRI is how similar the light is to the sun. So you can use that to try and figure out how white the color of the light will be. So if you want to avoid a pink shade or avoid a yellow shade, you want to look for a high CRI value, but it's not going to affect your plants. It's about your eyes. All right, plants will see light very differently than we do. So most of these measurements, lumens in particular, are only measuring a very narrow set of wavelengths of light. They're not measuring the entire visible spectrum. And these are wavelengths that we see really well as humans. And that is the wavelengths between 500 and 600 nanometers. It peaks right here in like the 500, 550 range. That's like green and yellow. So if you were to use a lux meter and measure your artificial light, that lux meter would only be measuring the green and yellow light, essentially, and it's not really measuring the red and the blue light. So we need all of that information to know how much light the plant is actually getting. So instead of lumens, what I want you to look for is a unit called, or a measurement called PAR, or PPFD. So PAR stands for the photosynthetically active radiation. That's just the plant active light. That is the light that the plant can make its food from, that it can photosynthesize from. PAR is measured in PPFD. PPFD stands for photosynthetic photon flux density. And so that is the amount of PAR, the amount of photosynthetic light that actually lands on the plant. And we measure this in individual photons. So the unit, stay with me, the unit for PPFD is micromole per meter squared each second. So that is the number of photons of photosynthetic light. That's the micromoles. That's the number of photons of light that fall on a meter squared each second. So this is a 1 second measurement that we're using, and we're just capturing how many photons are on this meter squared. And that's a much more accurate measurement because we're looking at the entire visible spectrum. And here is that illustrated. So the green line is that luminous flux that we saw a couple of slides ago. That is the lumen meter, the lux. It's people light. It's not plant light. We are just measuring the green and yellow spectrum. You can see that peak. So the black line is PAR, is PPFD. And so if I were to stick an ideal PAR meter under perfect plant light, this is what that PAR meter would be measuring. So it's not a perfect square. We do have this slight tooth shape, and that's because the red photons are a little bit lower power than the blue photons. So it requires more of them to make up the same energy, but it is a heck of a lot better than the luminous flux line, this green line, because we've got the entire visible spectrum involved. We're measuring the blue light and we're measuring the red light. So we've got everything involved. So why is that important? The evidence for the importance of that goes to this study. It's a 1971 study based on crops. So what they did is they took various crop plants and they stuck it in sort of a diffusive device, sort of like a light bulb, and they shot very narrow wavelengths of light at these leaves, as corn, beans, tomatoes, etc. And they measured the amount of photosynthesis, or they measured the gas exchange. No, sorry, I need to go back. They measured the amount of light that was absorbed at each wavelength. And so what they found is that not all wavelengths are absorbed equally by the plants. So if they were all absorbed at the same wavelengths, we would have a straight line across, but we have this noticeable dip in the green and yellow. Why is that? It's brilliant. I'll tell you. It's because they're green. Oh, you guys are so smart. So they are absorbing mostly the blue and the red light, and they're reflecting back the green light to us. And that is why we see green so well, is because we evolved in the forests looking at lots of green movement for our food, for our predators. So we can see green really, really well. So like if you ever are at a Christmas light show and you see, you can see colors that are on the far end of the spectrum, like the ultraviolet blue almost. And those are really hard to focus on. We have a hard time seeing those colors, but green we can see a lot of. And that's why lumen is measured. That's why lumen measures that green and yellow light, is because it appears the brightest to us. And they use those wavelengths because it's the best measurement for how our eyes are going to interpret that light.
It's also
Yes.
why a green laser pointer seems so much brighter,
Is that right? I suppose that makes sense.
even with the same
Right to
power.
our eyeballs.
Your eyeballs are seeing the green.
Right to our eyeballs. So avoid green lasers. That's the lesson here. All right, the last line on my very boring graph is the same study, this 1971 study, but this time they looked at the rate of photosynthesis. So they shot the narrow wavelengths of light 5 nanometers at a time, different colors, and they measured the gas exchange that occurred at these different wavelengths. And so what they found is the photosynthesis rate is also different at different wavelengths, which is very cool. And so we have it plotted here against the visible spectrum, and it pretty closely tracks the ideal PAR line, which makes sense because PAR is photosynthetically active light, right? So that's great. It even has that tooth shape that I talked about before. So just the lesson here is no green lasers, but also don't buy a high lumen value light. Don't be thinking that high lumen is high plant light. And I think that's what I said on the slide. Yeah. So high lumen, not high PAR. You want to shop for PAR. So Kelly, I don't have a PAR meter. How do I utilize PAR? I have some suggestions for you. You can buy a fixture first that has this information. I really highly recommend only buying horticultural bulbs. If your fixture doesn't have a PPFD map of some kind, or at least some PPFD information, it's probably a low quality bulb, and it's probably just not worth your money. So save your money and spend a little bit higher for a horticultural bulb that's going to have this information in the marketing materials. This is a company that I talk about a little bit more throughout the throughout the informational slideshow. And we'll talk about them more extensively. Okay, so light, how much light? Now that we know about PAR and we understand micromoles, I see phones coming out, don't screenshot this yet. These numbers aren't good enough yet. These are light values that I took out in my greenhouse. So it was about June 20th, so near the solstice, and I took light values using my PAR meter throughout the greenhouse. And this is what I came up with. So you might think you could just plug these numbers into your grow lights and be good to go, but you would be cooking your plants. It would be too much light. And I'll tell you why. So this has to do with the overall dose of the light that the plants get. So if you can imagine your plant as an empty cup, and every day you need to fill your plant's cup up with light, photon by photon by photon. And then once it's full, you can put the lid on and it's completed its photosynthesis for the day. So you can do that in a variety of ways. You could do that how a natural light progression would, which is it's dark during the night. We have a sunrise. It gets progressively brighter throughout the day. There's a midday peak, and then it's progressively darker and we have sunset. So you can, adjust your rate of drips throughout the day. Or you can do it how an artificial light would, which is you have an off, it's off all night, it's on at the same level, and then it's off again. The volume underneath both of these two curves is the same. So your plant's volume is the same. It still needs the same dose of light. So if you were to crank up your artificial light up to these midday peak values, you would be way overdosing your plants on light, and you don't want to do that. So I found that with a 12-hour photo period, that means 12 hours on, 12 hours off, you want to reduce reduce natural light about 30 to 50%. You just don't need as much artificial light as natural light, just because the light changes throughout the day with natural light. Okay, now you can screenshot this one. Whoever was it? This is about 30% to 50% less. This is the values that I had my plants at the grow house, the warehouse. I would recommend starting low if you're not sure. It's very easy to increase light. It is not easy to fix your plants once they've been kind of overdosed. Yes, they've been toasted. That's exactly right. Okay, so there's an app on your phone. It's called Photone. It has, yeah, go ahead.
And if you get overexposed, they can kind of bleach.
I have some slides on that later on. I'll show you some photos. They get like wrinkly and ugly. I'll show you it specifically though. This app, I highly recommend. It's free to download, but there's a premium upgrade of the PPFD conversion. So your phone is not able to measure PAR. It is able to measure lumen and convert to PAR. So it's not perfect. I compared the accuracy. It varies on your light source because the PAR is based, or the conversion is based on your light spectrum. So it's not perfect, but it'll get you in the ballpark. And if you don't want to buy a PAR meter, this is a good app for you. There's that. Whoever's the treasurer, Mrs. Treasurer, show yourself. I highly recommend buying a PAR meter for your society. Treat it like a library book. A PAR meter, the cheapest one on the market is about $140. And you can check it out every month and have the person go home and measure their space, make adjustments, bring it back the next month, give it to the next person, and you'll all become better growers. So I think that would be a great investment for your orchid society. In the meantime, you can download the app. Okay, question number 2, what kind of light, what device do I buy? I sometimes still find that people use fluorescence. Anybody out there still using fluorescence? This might be the first time nobody's using
Up until your last talk, I was.
You were using that?
Now I'm using
Now you're
the
using LED?
yellow ones. Switch them all out.
Yeah, there's always like one guy that has a fluorescent. I'm so happy. LEDs are just the bomb. I'm gonna skip this. So you don't need to learn all that. You guys already know all that because we're LED growers. LEDs have a much longer service life. Often they have a warranty. Fluorescents just don't have that. And the fluorescents are not being made anymore. The Chinese bought all of the materials to make the fluorescents and they're just kind of selling the back stock. So eventually we're gonna not have access to fluorescents anymore. So LEDs are really the way to go. There's 3 main types of LEDs. Was there questions? There's 3 main types of LEDs. Those kind of correlate to old fluorescent types. The bulb is just about yay big. They tend to be pretty expensive. A big brand is Soltech. You'll see them. They're just like a spotlight, and they're really only meant for a coverage of yay bigger. So they're not a huge coverage area. So 1 office pothos is really all they got. The bar lights are really a wonderful little middle ground. They usually come in 2 feet or 4 foot, and they're like a T5, T8 fluorescent replacement. So they're often a lot more powerful than T5 or T8s. They're pretty juicy.
Yeah.
They've got some power. The intensity of the light is not even, and I'll show you some graphs. It's brightest in the middle. But that's true of any of these types of fixtures. You're gonna have the brightest intensity be right below the fixture and it be shady everywhere else. There's also panels on the market. This is a great horticultural option. The only problem is they tend to be very bright. They're really meant for cannabis growing, and those are full sun plants. Our orchids, not so much. So the light tends to be very intense. But you can make it work. This
Someone said they're like bar, but there are a bunch of new lights now.
Yeah, those are bar LED lights. Those are the individual diodes that you're
Yeah.
seeing.
I mean, the local ones.
I will talk about that.
That might be what she's got.
It's
Like what you're calling the bar.
yes. Yeah, it's like a T5 replacement, but yeah.
The other thing about the panels, they can get pretty hot.
Again, they have a driver in them. So
Yeah.
this brand actually that I'm going to talk about, this is called Horticultural Lighting Group. And they're unique because the panel and the driver are actually separate.
I have some of those too, and they're the best.
Good. She
Especially
knows.
if the driver.
This group is so smart.
Especially the driver is waterproof because I water inside my,
Yes.
my little.
This is a great example. So most of the panels, they do get hot because they have an attached control panel that some of them have a good heat sink, but most of the time they get hotter than just your bar LED. So if you're gonna have a tent like this, you're gonna want to have exhaust before it.
My problem with my tent is that I get lots of light from the top level, but then underneath I can't get lights because they'll get water on them.
Yeah.
You get waterproof. There's like, they're depending, but there's certain waterproof panels and waterproof lights that I've done. I grow all my orchids on that.
There's a few waterproof ones on the market. I have one in my presentation. They're just more expensive, of course. A word of warning with this slide is that a lot of the lighting manufacturers' data is taken inside of optimum conditions, which would be a tent like this. So the tent, when you zip it up, it's got that beautiful reflective stuff. And so that light reflects back instead of dropping on your carpet, it reflects back onto the plant. And so that increases the values a little bit rather than having it in an open space. So keep in mind, if you're using the manufacturer's PAR data and your space is a little different, you still want to measure and make sure you're getting those values. But something like this is a great setup. You can buy these at like hydroponic stores, Amazon, lots of places available. This is the bar lights. These are individual LED lights, and this brand happens to be waterproof. Thrive Agritech is the brand. I'll talk about it in a sec. But this is an example of how you can set up bar lights. This was how I had them in my commercial space, but you can buy one of these baker's racks in just about any permutation you want. You have a weird little closet that needs orchids in it, you can probably find one of these shelves for your closet. As long as you can find a light, go ham, you can have fun. You can customize the shelf heights, you can customize the number of shelves. It's fabulous. Okay, so here's some bar light choices for you. I just updated this data, and I'm pleased to say that the only one of these that went up in price was the Barina. They went up about 20% in price. Oops. But Barina is a Chinese brand. They're like the low-end brand. They're not waterproof. Thrive Infinity on the high end, that's the waterproof one if you really want one. This is a very high-end commercial grade product that is dimmable, so you can just dim it like your bathroom, you know. But 341 micromoles is a lot of light for orchids. They're probably too much for most orchids. The botanical LEDs in the middle, that is an American brand. They are manufactured in China, but they were invented by an American guy. And I believe, yeah, I think they're shipped from here in the States. He's in California. So to my knowledge, this is the only brand of lights that has specifically been invented for use with orchids. Dude went to an orchid nursery and took measurements and did whatever research he did and invented these lights and is now marketing them to orchid people. And I admit they're quite nice for the low light plants. The money, it's expensive. But if that's worth it to you, they are an American brand. Done with this slide? Fabulous. Okay, Verbena is what I grow with. They're cheap. They have these wonderful little reflector panels that really angle the light down. They used to be 6 for 80, and now they're 4 for 80. They snuck it in there. So I bought some Verbenas, and I wanted to give them the test. I wanted to see if this marketing map, this PAR map, this is what you want to look for when you're shopping for a horticultural light. I wanted to see if this was accurate, and then I wanted to produce a little bit more of a map longwise, seeing how the light faded in the corners, so to speak. And so this is that data. So I just set the fixture up above the ground about 20 inches, and I measured on the ground just how the light varied at different heights. So I started at a height of 4 inches underneath the light. So I'm just taking my little meter and I'm measuring 4 inches, and then 12 inches, etc. At 4 inches, what I found is there's really not that much light outside of directly under the fixture. So it's not a great idea to put your light directly above your plants. The light distribution is just too concentrated, and you're going to end up getting a very focused beam of light on a very small part of your plant. So what I recommend is raising your lights 8 to 12 inches at least. And then if you're not happy with that amount of light, then you add more lights, but you should never have them be super, super close to your
I tried
plants.
something where I took them, instead of being here, I put them in other edges and aimed them at an angle.
I have slides of that.
You can spread it out. Oh,
I'm
well,
you guys know all of
we're on the same page.
It's only that.
Okay, this is the same data, it's just represented a little differently. This is like, imagine if I'm holding the light to my nose and I'm looking down it, and then I can see the light cast. So if you cut it in half, that's the brightest part, and that would be the solid line. And then at the edges is the dotted line. So you can kind of see how it depreciates as you get further away. It depreciates this way, and it also depreciates this way. So it's kind of like a little pillow, little mountain pillow. So I'm not happy. I need more light. What happens when I add more light? Here's 2 lights that are the same. Yeah, 2 of those 42 watt. Or oops, no. That one? Yeah, 150. Goes up to 200. We have that effect, and then we also have the effect of the overall like flat plane of light is much wider. So before, the flat plane was about 6-8 inches or so, and now we have more light, 10 inches to work with. So if you have a 10-inch plant that needs even light, you're going to have to add more plants and add more lights and space them apart. Okay, I'm still not happy. I want to grow super bright bandas. What do? You can add another light, and we have that same sort of cone shape again. We have 3 lights now. But I think I have a slide. Yes. Here's my slide. So here's what happens if you tilt the outer lights. So here's untilted. We have an overall height 275 or 275 micromoles. That's like bright strap leaf paths. You could probably grow some nice cattleyas with that, maybe vandas. And then if you tilt them just a little bit, 20 degrees, that light falls back onto your plants instead of onto the carpet, and you have fully even plane of light, which is quite nice. So as a commercial grower, that matters to me, to have that fully even plane of light. You as a home grower, that might not matter as much. You can optimize these climates. You can have your bright growing things right under the bulb, and you can have your shady growing things in the corners. No matter what shape your fixture is, it's always going to be like that. It's going to be the shadiest in the corners of where the light reaches. Optimize with mirrors. My mother has her plants on a bathroom vanity, a single fixture. She only needs one fixture and the bathroom vanity reflects the light. It's perfect. You can use shiny walls, you could use one of those shiny tents, there's lots of options. And then use your light meter app if you don't have a par meter to just kind of map out your space, figure out where's the bright spots, where's the dim spots, and optimize that way. Okay, more science, sorry, everybody still awake? Woo. All right, so blurple, I'm sure you've heard this word. It is an ugly word, isn't it? A blurple light is basically a limited spectrum light, and that just means that it does not have the full visible spectrum. If you take out a color, it looks very odd to our eyes. So if the light does not have all of the colors, it looks very strange. And in this case, it's missing green and yellow. So the rationale for blurple used to be that, well, chlorophyll only absorb red and blue light, and they reflect back all green and yellow light, right? Well, yeah, that's true. When you extract chlorophyll and you suspend them in a solution in laboratory conditions, certain chlorophyll, yeah, only absorb red and blue light. But as we found way back when, that was like 20 years ago now, but this slide that I showed you, this is what is this? This is the light absorbed at various wavelengths by the entire leaf. So when we have the entire leaf involved, we see, it absorbs everything. It absorbs the entire visible spectrum. So blurple, nonsense. So that does not answer a whole lot about light spectra other than don't buy blurple. All of these light sources are full spectrum light sources, and they still look totally different. So the gray line is the sun. That is all the colors of the rainbow. And it's, it's flat and even and happy. A blurple is the red line. So you can see that big chunk of red and big chunk in the blue. The Barbina light that I've been yammering on about is the blue line. That's a full spectrum LED. So it does have like bumps in the red and bumps in the green and bumps in the blue, and that adds up to white. So I'm comfortable recommending a full spectrum LED as long as it has some of everything. That's what you want to look for. Don't look for a limited spectrum fixture. Always go for full spectrum and one that doesn't offend your eyes. Yes.
There are full spectrum bulbs that still have sort of a tint to them, like yellowish or pinkish. How full is that full spectrum, really?
It's that at that point, it's really about our eyes. I can't tell you, nobody's researched how that affects plants, and probably the answer is not much. But look for that CRI value. And the higher that number is, I think it's higher, close to 100. That's going to be the whitest, the purest white. So if you don't like that pink or you don't like that yellow, look for a high CRI value, and then it won't offend our eyes. I don't like the pinks either. I think the yellow line is the only other interesting line on here. This is a fluorescent spectrum. So fluorescence, they sort of work. You have to pick and choose your recipe of elements that you put inside the tube, and different elements will fluoresce at different wavelengths. So what ends up happening is there's this chunk of blue and a chunk of yellow and a chunk of red, and there's stuff missing in between. I found that kind of interesting. Still considered full spectrum though. All right, so here, there's not any data that I'm aware of that's been done on orchids, and orchids make very poor research subjects anyway, because they're very slow. But this is a study that's done on cucumbers. These seedlings are all 30 days old. The one on the left was grown under a blurple spectrum, that's red and blue only. And then the one in the middle was grown under a blue only spectrum. And then the one under the right was grown under an artificial full spectrum LED solar. So full spectrum solar. Which one's better? Yeah, I don't know. So the researchers concluded that obviously the artificial solar was the best, but we can apply this to orchids too, right? Greater biomass, greater strength, that obviously is gonna produce better flowers, so that's what we want. As an anecdote here, I had a guy call me, he had been growing under blurple lights for about 2 years. And in that 2 years, he had acquired a collection of awarded Cattleya plants. They had all been awarded years ago. And so he had bloomed all of these plants under the blurple lights and has measured them. He's an orchid judge himself, and he's measured them, and across the board, all of his flowers were about 20% smaller than when they were originally awarded. So this is just an anecdote, but it makes sense that if you have less biomass, less strength, less photosynthetic production going on, your flowers are going to be smaller. So don't limit your plants. You don't need to. There's so many full spectrum products out there. Just buy one. Okay, so this is about toasting. We asked for pictures of toasting. It is really easy to overdose your plants on light, and I always recommend starting low and then just kind of bringing it back up. I even have, like, when I get new lights, I'll put tape over them, gradually reduce the tape a little bit just to let the plants settle in. Orchids, they'll turn this bright red almost overnight. You can see this part here, it was shaded underneath. That's what it used to look like. Plants like this don't really recover. They often will just sort of look wrinkly and unhappy for a long time if they don't get lower light fairly immediately. I use a product called Vapor Guard. It is a terpenic, like an oily solution. Comes in a very big jug, but it is an anti-transpirant. So if you are having issues with this, or you have a lot of rootless plants, it's a great solution because you dip your plant in it and the plant cannot transpire, so it cannot lose water. It can only bring in new water. So that's a great tool if you have a wrinkly, unhappy looking plant.
You can make the plant correct, not the roots, right? Or you get the whole.
Dip the plant, not the roots. Yeah.
Yeah, having waterproof roots, you probably need it, not
No,
the-
we don't want waterproof roots. Let's see.
Actually, after you dip them, if you hang them upside down, so then the trans kind of. Feel on the roots, and then it dry, then you can put it on.
Good tip, good tip. Here's some more toasted plants. Very sad, right? These plants don't have great roots, and they had what I would say would be normal light for that type of plant. So just because it didn't have enough roots, it could not pick up enough water in order to transpire enough. So orchids are an interesting photosynthesizer. They're called CAM photosynthesizers. They photosynthesize like a succulent. So they do their photosynthesis, their collection during the day, but they only breathe at night. They only transpire at night. It's a water saving mechanism. So what I think happens to these plants with the overdosing is that they're over photosynthesizing during the day, and then they're over transpiring at night. So if you can cut off that transpiration, it helps. And then cut down the light too. Here's some frags on the left. I toasted that one. And then on the right is a toasted path. It was weird. It looked almost like the chlorophyll was all dead. It was like I was looking through a window at the bottom of the leaf. Strange. It looks like a fungus, but nope, it was a toasted path.
Blew out the core.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. It was strange. This plant has recovered now. It looks okay. It took 4 years.
Did that leaf
4 years.
recover or?
Yeah, that leaf recovered, but it still looks funky.
Anything that has the multifloral in it generally can take a long time. What's your cover?
I think that's it. Oh, no, we got more. The flowers, they follow the light. So if you have multiple light sources, you have 2 lights, your plant might decide it wants to look at both. Be aware of that. I've had people, they'll open one flower and then they'll turn the plant because they want to look at the flower, and then the other flower opens the other way. Try not to do that, then you'll have a nicer display. I think that's it. Any other questions? Happy to answer questions.
Talking about the wavelengths and those different plants there was a kid at one of our science fairs that was doing a light spectrum, which made the plants grow the best. Unfortunately, he measured height as the measure of what grew the best.
Yeah.
So under green light, they grew really tall.
Ah,
interesting.
Because they couldn't, they couldn't see any light. It's like, I'm growing in the dark, I'm growing in the dark.
That's funny.
It should have been mass, but
Yeah, it should have
middle
been
school,
mass.
they're not gonna measure mass, they'll measure height.
Go for it.
Tend to cut down on lighting in winter and increase the amount of light, the hours they get in summer.
This is a good question. This is kind of a debate. Oh, sorry, right here. The question was, do you need to alter the photo period throughout the year, right? Change the amount of time that you give the plants. In my opinion, the answer is no. Orchids specifically are largely equatorial plants. And so they're not receiving a big daytime difference throughout the year. Their seasons are the same throughout the year. But I have always kept my photo period at 12 hours and things flower. So yeah, and behind you.
For like plants that are sun stressed, they're producing the defensive compounds to absorb the excess light, right? So if you reduce the light levels after they turn red, do they actually photosynthesize less efficiently, or have you found that reductions?
The plant definitely has been like stunted, it needs some time to recover.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's some damage has been done. What is the damage? I'm not entirely sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. More?
How do you manage like humidity in there?
In my greenhouse, it's mostly with the swamp cooler. We have a very large swamp cooler. Keeps it humid enough. The warehouse is gone now. Now it makes marijuana. So we had a swamp cooler, but for the most part, the humidity was managed with it had a high pressure misting system. So, yeah, very nice high pressure mist system. Yes.
Any different from that readily?
With red leaves, I've had this question before. No, I don't think so. I mean, red leaves is an adaptation. It depends on where the leaf, where the plant grows relative to the sun. What is it?
And are they more like higher light or lower light or higher?
There's red leaves of all types.
All my street view up under my lights get red leaves.
Yeah.
It's just because it's just too much like this.
Well, that's anthocyanin that's naturally there is different than anthocyanin that appears.
I would guess that I'm making it.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Let me check the chat for any questions. Julie asks, does the red leaf reaction always damage the orchid?
Always, but it can. I would say it is an incoming sign of potential damage.
Okay. Incoming sign of potential, it's a warning sign, Julie.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna move on to show and tell. Paula, can you shut the lights off?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. You ready? So, yeah, Peter, he's not here tonight, but he grows tons of Masdevallias. He's got a couple species.
Okay, I can do it. So
Yeah,
that's what you cut out, and it's a very nice pink one, then we have some yellow in it. It's a really nice selection for those, although it can be very difficult to buy. Raspberry keep the eye is a fairly cool growing one. It does well outdoors in San Francisco, for example. You can see there that it's a beautiful red, reddish color. There's a bunch of colors, and that's the coccinia. I think both of those are coccinia. I think the one's called Blanca is just the white form of coccinia, or has a lot of coccinia in it. If anyone's ever visited John Leonard's greenhouse now, he has every color of Masdevallia coccinia in the book, and it's just like this whole side of the greenhouse is all different colors of coccinia. So it's just beautiful. It comes in pink, white, yellow, purple. And okay, Kate has a Eulophia. This is a hybrid. I don't know what the parents are. And something, I have. So a lot of these come from, a lot of Eulophias are African or Dendrobium linguiforme used to be a Doctrillia, got moved into Dendrobium, and linguiforme means tongue-like, and that's a great one. Also for the Bay Area, growing outside. It's actually very common in both cold and heat. Where it grows in Australia, it gets exposed to very high temperatures. Dave, where's Dave? Is he at home?
I think he's at home.
Okay, well, anyway, Dave has a Potinara, which is a trigeneric hybrid. This one called Tropical Orange. And then Leptodes bicolor, an almost miniature, Brazilian, beautiful blue. That's a good selection for intermediate to warm greenhouse. And then Colomalia, formerly Dilaria. Actually, I think I have a piece of this that I got from Dave. So this is one called Mussolini Princess Pico. Very nice, and I go mine outdoors. 7 p.m. Derek,
Yeah.
tell us about your plants.
So this one,
Right
Tim,
here.
yeah, Tim Culbertson. So I tried to take pictures of all the stuff on here so that the people at home can see what we're talking about. But you can turn these lights on because people can actually see.
Yeah,
these
so
in
those are
person.
here. It's great.
Kelly, can you turn those last 3 on? Thank you.
There we go.
So Tim Culbertson came and talked about crossing Hokaglossom genetics. And so I actually got that. I cheated. That one was in bloom last week, so I didn't bloom it myself. But that was one of his crosses with Hokaglossom subleafolium and Phalaenopsis stewartiana.
Which is really nice, and local blossoms are a great selection to grow outdoors. There's quite a few different species, and many of them do very well outdoors.
And then this Silogeny Vanover Bergii is something from Dan Newman, I believe. I got that at the Peninsula. It smells really good if you get a chance to come smell it.
Okay.
Then he's next down the
Okay,
line.
that's this one here. So this is a little Masdevallia hybrid. Which. Oh, Ziegler's Love. Okay, so Ziegler's Love is it's a very popular hybrid. It has really nice form. There's quite a few different awarded forms of this. Some of them are much larger, but I think there's some foreign varieties as well. So this is one called Peak Dust. And again, another selection of grow outdoors. And then we have Sarcopilus. These are just coming into bloom now. There's more down the table here, but also a great selection to grow outdoors. They're from Australia. All the colors basically come from just a couple of species, which have been extensively hybridized. And the king of them all is to get a yellow form, which
And an orange.
I bought a compact with 60 plants. One is yellow. So anyway, it's quite rare. These are really easy to grow and are very nice, So that's probably by Vince. And also this Apple blossom. Blossom or something else. So this is called tarantula. That's a great name for it. Sunset orange. Nice colors and. Okay. One,
I have to go to my,
Next up.
maybe stripes Pakistan, but that's. Do you have all of these? or-
yeah, I think so. I put them in the folder, so we're gonna have to. All right, so there was a japonica, I think.
Siberian japonica, no. It's here. It's no longer Siberia, it's a phalaenopsis. But Siberia was originally spelled backwards. That's how they came up with the name, and now it's been moved into phalaenopsis. But a great little, this is a very, nice, little type selections. See this thing? Can't smell your name. Okay, also brought in my list. What's next?
We just got this now.
Picture of this one. Okay. This is, says DTPS, which is an old word, for cheilitis, but it's, phalaenopsis. And it's called blood wall. Nice collection.
Oh, I know, I know this.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Miguel.
Again, I got this for you.
Okay, what else do we have?
Okay, there it is.
You're in the right, going in the right direction.
The others didn't upload. Sorry, people at
Okay,
home.
all
We're just
right.
gonna do this in the room.
Okay, Justin Payne brings in this maxillaria Hansbergii. So this is actually named for a man who was in the society. Yes. Yeah, he passed away, I don't remember the high school. Let me tell you, but anyway, it was named after him. Yes. And quite a few of us have this plant, but they're all pieces of the original plant. Yeah. Are you gonna show it again? Okay.
This is Hansbergii.
Maxillary Hansbergii. That's what I have to go outdoors as well. I go it outdoors in San Mateo and around. Okay, this is brought in by Phyllis. Well, this is Dendrobia lodogisia. So this is an interesting species. Also can be grown outside, but it needs a drier winter grass. So if you are going to grow it outside, keep it drier in the winter. Has these delightful little pink flowers. We saw this in China at a special reserve, and all the trees that were just covered with them. There were just pink flowers everywhere. It was just incredible. And that was about an elevation of about 1,000 meters. Yes. Did you show that one? So, okay, Florence. Where's Florence? There's Florence. Florence brings in a BLC Diego called Pika. I don't know what the parents are. There's William Farrell by Cattleya Devosia Scully.
It takes more after that William Farrell.
Yeah, and I have a cold, so I can't smell anything.
Very slight.
Oh, that's really nice. Roses.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's some roses.
Okay, Bill Weaver, these are too small to be your plants.
It's a division.
It's a division, okay, because I can actually lift it.
That's what the red tag means.
Okay, so Bill brings in LC higher ground, it's probably the smallest LC in the entire collection.
They all start out small.
Really?
Not in Bill's house.
Nothing.
Say that way.
Anyone's ever seen Bill's plants? It takes like a forklift to bring them in. Okay, and then Bill brings in a nice selection of Sarcochilus. Are these all from the guy in Australia?
Scott Berry.
Scott Berry, yeah. So Scott was at the Santa Barbara show.
It's looking for the sound.
Every year he comes and he brings plants and he brings compots, and if you're lucky, you can get a compot. And if you grow out 60 of them, you'll get one of these.
Okay.
How many did you grow?
You buy a flask.
You got a flask. And how many were yellow in this flask?
Probably 4 or 5.
Really? Not a bad flask.
This what happens when I plant.
Okay, so this one is, they're all Culnura. So this is Dip Spotted Gold by Wild Penny. And then we have Roundup Purple. Roundup.
Yeah.
That's a purple dot that's got cute little spots all over it. And then this is one called Voodoo by Aero Extreme, nice dark red color. And then this is one called Dazzle Red Spot by Secure Ghost. Okay, if you grow these outside, Asuka used to grow them in rocks.
Yeah.
And so they would weigh about 55 pounds, but the key was that when he grew them in rocks, he never repotted them. And you would get these massive plants that would just have blooms all over them. Unfortunately, if you're not growing in rocks, you actually need to repot them. And sarcochiles can be a little touchy, so you gotta do it at just the right time.
Put them all in rocks. Looks like you're.
I have changed my potting media because I was growing in pure bark and that was apparently too wet.
Mhm.
So I'm now doing 50-50 bark and perlite and see what happens.
See what happens, yeah,
But
and
look at the
actually,
size of them. All of those are in a 2-inch pot. Every,
Yeah.
the biggest one's in a 2-inch pot.
so Scott was growing his in this
Pull
weird,
it, no, pull it out.
it's in a little pot inside.
Pick it up.
See,
Oh.
mine is exactly the same thing, because I'm scared to repot them, so we'll see what happens.
Well, and when you repot those, you just chuck them into another, you don't disturb them.
Don't disturb the roots, yes,
Yeah.
but Scott Beard grows them in this weird,
He uses, rock wool and like a pumice or something like that.
but he never
No.
disturbs the roots
But
either.
my water's too salty for that. They would
And
crack.
then there's another curious thing about sarcochiles. I don't know if the hybrids are so susceptible to, but if you ever try to go to species, they have this very disturbing habit called sarcodilis sudden death. Where they just all of a sudden die on you for no reason at all. And it's well known in Australia, if you grow species sarcochilis, they
Well,
just call it the sarcochilis sudden death syndrome.
I got awarded the, so far, only FCC on the Sarcochitis. And it suffered that exact.
Oh, we should have said so, okay.
Every division died.
Now, this is an old classic. This is BC Yellowbird. So when I first started growing orchids, this was a very, very popular hybrid. Easy to grow, grows indoors, grows outdoors, grows in a warm greenhouse, blooms for you. So if you're a beginner, this is a great starting plan. And that's brought in by Jessica. Where's Jessica? Jessica. That one's called BC Yellowbird.
How many of them are fragrant? I can smell it.
That one's fragrant. I can't smell it. Most people would find it fragrant. Can you smell it?
I'm not getting anything.
Because most of them that have the brassavola in it have scent.
This one's just about to open too.
Yeah.
There's no smell, whatever you throw it.
Okay, this is a Tolumnia. So these were called dancing ladies or Equiton Ancidiums. They occurred in the wild, mostly in the Caribbean islands. They're very fun to grow because there's lots of different colors of them. You don't see the species very often, but there's a lot of hybrids available out there now. If you do grow them, there's one secret you need to be really conscious of. And they have these very deep channeled leaves. You gotta check them all the time because they grow scale in them like you and me. So if you are growing these, check the leaves constantly because they're very prone to getting scale. And this is brought in by Sharon.
So you use a little bit of neem oil and.
Oh, you can spray with neem oil or just clean it off with alcohol.
Do you ever use peroxide?
I don't use peroxide, but I use neem oil or alcohol, or if it's real bad, I'll use the bitter sprays. But you just keep an eye on it. If you keep it under control, that'll be fine. Okay, and then Sharon also brings in this apple Toniana. Sorry, brought in last month too. Okay. That means it's still in bloom. Well, it's good. It's fine. It's a good reason to grow it. All right, and here's a really nice purple path called Hinsin Ying Makastar, brought in by Ivan. These are really nice purple paths that people just love. It's great, vindy color path button. Okay, next we have the Miltoniopsis. Which one is this? Edwidge sabarin by Rosalie. So Rosalie is a species with a hybrid. And then, yes, it says, oh, Ring Komoda, that's interesting. Okay, so Ring Komoda, the Komoda strains were from Komoda orchids in Hawaii. So this Ring Komoda is actually a pretty old hybrid that quite a few of us have. I have some of this in my collection as well. The nice bloomer and very well grown. Who's growing this?
Is that
Dawn? Dawn.
done?
Beautifully grown. One of the challenges that people have with grow these is the leaves get all crinkly and wrinkly. If
Yeah.
you're trying to grow them indoors. And this is perfect. I mean, the leaves are in great condition. They have one leaf here with a little bit of a crinkle. But if you try to grow them indoors, they all end up looking like this. So you've done a really good job. Okay,
They grow them in the greenhouse, they get black dots.
yeah. Oh, what, did I forget something?
We forgot, there's a couple of Josh's plants at the end there.
Okay, we'll get those.
Masdevallia over there. This one reminded me.
Okay. Oh, I missed the masdevallia down there too. Okay,
That one's nice.
yeah, so this is Masdevallia atropurpurea.
Dark.
It's dark. There's quite a few masdevallias that have this stuff.
These are your Rhiannons, these are yours?
There's quite a few masdevallias that have the dark brown with the yellow, different sizes of flowers and so forth, but they tend to be the easiest ones to grow.
Sounds good.
It's good, right?
Yeah, I burn them all in my head.
And who brought this in?
This is Rhiannon's too.
Okay,
Yes, that's mine.
okay, and this
It's a little
is,
passive- it's a little passive crying, but-
yeah, this is Paphiopedilum caudatum. And if you'll notice, it has these very long petals, and that's why it's called caudatum. And theoretically, these grow as long as they can until they touch the ground or touch whatever they're growing on. So yours have actually grown longer than where they're sitting. But if you,
Yeah, 'cause I actually pulled it, so they're in a little like greenhouse thing, and I actually pulled the tails out, so they would not get wet.
so there's a trick you can do is if you're growing this, when it starts to do this, put it up on a big pot. Cause I have one of these. They're really- Wow, they just keep going and going. So anyway, the idea was that the pollinator goes up the petals to get to the plant. Okay, we've got a cymbidium over there.
Oh, yeah, Ken brought this in. Is there a reason why? Is this awarded?
Probably got, probably
So
stop.
I brought this in for judging and it got a low.
Screening.
I would screen it, this has been open for maybe almost 2 months.
Wow.
So I would have screened it because the condition isn't the best.
What's the name?
It's Beautiful Muse, a hybrid by Annie Easton. I think it's Red Beauty by Lucida Flame.
Fresh cut grass. Okay, there's a couple we forgot over there.
Okay, this is not Masdevallia shorteriana. This is Masdevallia Rickenbachia. So whose is this? Josh. It's Rickenbachia. It's very similar to shorteriana. There's another one called, starts with an F. Right now, there are 3 very similar flowers, but shorteriana doesn't fold back like this. Okay. Anyway, that's I grow this one also outdoors and in my pool greenhouse. It's easy to grow and can put on a really nice display of flowers. And then we have a peony. Way to go, Josh. So this is peony grandiflora. There's lots of peonies. Did you send out the price list on the? It's from Chiquita. What happened to that? I don't think.
We did, we were gonna put it in this next coming month.
Well, it has to be, they have to be in by June. But anyway, in that price list that I'm sending out, there's all kinds of peonies. Which can be very difficult to source, so if you're interested in peonies, take a look at the prices I'm sending out as you can. So this is grandiflora. The other one that's in bloom right now is more common form sonnet. We just saw some of these in King, but they were, actually saw grandiflora. We also saw Pricox, which blooms in November, but we saw lots of plants in there.
So this one came from seed,
See,
From POE, right?
Yeah.
okay, and then Katie, you want me to go to yours too?
Sure.
All right. Please. Let's see, we got. Sorry, this is a Prostecia.
I do, there are the yellow tags in the.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure this is a Vatiloba, but anyway, this is Prostecia. This is a Brazilian genus. Most of them have gotten all into one, which is well, so it's pretty related, you know. It's, Promenade. Promenade. But, there's a whole bunch of striped ones, and there was all kinds of arguments about which one was which, and now the Brazilians have put them all into one species of Walsonia. But this one is not, this is one of the ones that's different. You don't see these very often for sale. They're one of my favorite, they're really easy to grow, and they put on an incredible bloom. And Pierre, Pujol was growing these outdoors in Redwood City and having really good luck with them. Okay, we'll do that next. This one. So this is the large name Infidel. This doggies in Sikkim last week, hundreds of them. So this is the, obviously, the Southeast Asian, people, the Yunnan, Bhutan, Nepal. Beautiful little species, you can go outdoors. And what do we got next? Lycaste. Oh, Lycaste. Oh, just opening up. So this is one of the Lycaste that loses its leaves. And it blooms on the bare molds and then put up that leaves. You give us some of the dry rex, you give us some of the dry rex, could you water? No. No, you don't.
Which one is that?
That one is called Consagrina. I believe it's Mexican. Odontoglossum.
Keto number one.
Keto number one, that's it.
I think that's exactly fine.
Okay, so this is a cross of Crustaceum by
Nimium.
Nimium, Nimium. So this is one that, Steve Becky.
I think so, I don't know for sure.
Okay. And Gensly. Here's another great one. I think it would grow outdoors, because in Australia, it grows under very hot conditions and also can take reasonably cool conditions. You can do well outside. It's one that you can go in a warm greenhouse or in a intermediate greenhouse. Likes a lot of light. Judy Carney had one that took up a whole wall of greenhouse. Incredible. Hard one to grow. And it has these little, leaves that kind of like little cigars. Okay, I think that was it. Did you miss somebody?
Yeah.
Oh, this one is Kathleen. Shoot, where's Shoot? Sorry, I apologize. So Shoot brings in this, I'm not gonna look it up, I'll hold it behind. So this is an SLC, which is probably just C now. SLC with sarcopenitis, Lelia cattleya, probably all C now, but anyway, it's one called Coastal Sunrise Tropical. Very nice to grow, nice and good. Now you can turn it while it was growing, because all the flowers.
I throw it up against my wall outside of San Jose.
Yeah, it's
See,
doing
all
really well. And actually, if you come up and look at it, you've got 1, 2, every single growth here has new buds coming, so it's not only happy, but it's producing lots of new growth as well. And it's in rocks.
Yes,
No repotting needed for a long time.
exactly.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Okay, don't forget to get your raffle tickets. We'll start in 5 minutes.
We're gonna have to go with
It's not how.
Well, giveaway.
Not flying around.
No buying. It's- If you get one.
You have to get your member ticket.
They do.